Hello, everyone. Matthew Skelton here. I'm the co-author of Team Topologies.
Hello, I'm Manuel Paes, the other co-author of Team Topologies.
Thank you for joining us on this live stream at the launch of the second edition of the Team Topologies book, 5 years after the publication of the first one in 2019. It's great to be here, and we'll be sharing some details of what's in the second edition. We've got some of the people waiting to talk to, some of the people who co-authored, who wrote some of the case studies. So we've got them waiting, and we'll talk to them later on. Emmanuel and I are going to reflect on what we've learned from using Team Topologies ideas over the last few years, and share with you some other stuff that we've been working on, and so on and so on. So thank you for joining us. And there's lots of people joining and saying hi. Thank you very much. This particular live stream is the one focused on EMEA region. So that's where we'll zoom into the case studies from that region, and I'll explain that a little bit later on. Please add comments and questions in the chat. If you're on StreamYard or on YouTube, just pop the questions in the chat. And we might include some of those comments and questions and things like in the stream as we go. Let's see what happens. First off, though, let's talk about the mission, because when Manuel and I were writing, when we were writing the book, right? So part of the reason I think the book worked so well is that Manuel and I have got an underlying drive in the same direction, like underlying kind of sense of purpose. We didn't articulate that exactly, I think, strongly enough in the book, right? Like it's not necessarily there. So like we've effectively sort of done some archaeology to work out what that mission and purpose was as we were writing it, and so then we're really zooming into that now, and we can speak to it, I think, now, can't we? Right, I'll just share my screen and we put it on the screen. Do you want to take us through this? Oops. It would help if I shared my screen. Let's do that now. Here we go. You can tell this is live. One or two little hiccups. There we go. Right, let's see if this works. Yay, there we go.
Yay, we got it. Yeah, so this kind of became more and more evident, I think, as we saw the growing adoption of the ideas in Team Topologies, was that, hey, we're actually here to make work more humane and more effective for everyone through the Team Topologies patterns and principles. And it's true that most organizations that are looking into the ideas from Team Topologies are starting from the point of view of how do we get faster delivery of value to our customers? How do we get teams to be more self-sufficient? How do we get faster flow within the organization or within technology? And that that all makes sense. But as Matthew said, I think both of us felt when we were writing the book, because we had been applying the patterns in different customers already, that we saw that this has a very positive impact on how people feel about the work they do, how more sustainable it is when we consider things like what's the cognitive load, is there something going on that we need to address, and what do we need to do next? So we basically kind of make this explicit with this mission, right?
Yes, because there's loads of different ways to think about knowledge work and value delivery and so on and so on. And some of those approaches, to be totally honest, don't really care about the human experience. Let's be honest about that. Then that's not what they're focused on. They're focused on other things. And so what sets Team Topologies apart, I think it's reasonable to say, is this underlying sense of trying to make things more humane for people, but also more effective. Like, it's not one or the other. The reason why organizations are more effective is because they're more humane. That's the core belief. So you can choose to disagree with that and therefore Team Topologies won't be as useful for you. But if you do agree with that core belief that organizations are more effective when they are more humane, then Team Topologies is probably a really, really great like tool or approach to use in making that change. And this is actually really important in terms of what we decided to do recently. So we're in the process of switching all of the core operation of Team Topologies into a not-for-profit approach, and so that then connects through to this mission, because our mission is not to like earn millions and millions of dollars and go and like buy a yacht or live on whatever, a desert island or something like this. Like, this is what we're focused on. We're focused on this mission here about making organizations more humane and effective. And there's a load of stuff we'll share with you in a few moments around some offerings that we've pulled together over the last few years that are designed to achieve exactly that. You know, if Manuel and I had a very strong, like, let's earn whatever it is, 100 million each through some certification scheme, then it would look what we're doing would look very different. So what we're doing is very much focused on this core mission here. So yeah, just a couple of comments around the live stream. So there are some challenges with the LinkedIn live stream. So thanks for those of you who have jumped across to the YouTube or the StreamYard live stream. Thank you very much. We've got people from a whole load of different places all around the world. It looks like certainly around Europe, Africa, Middle East, Brazil. So thank you all for joining. It's Iran. Great to be here with you. So bear with me a second. Let's just switch that one off. Okay. So a few things that drive towards that mission. Manuel and I are super excited to be launching some leadership cohort options coming soon. So very small groups, probably about 8 people. So if you're in a position of leadership of some kind, then join a group of 8 people online, 4 weeks, and we will work together through a set of material to help you lead with clarity, avoid common pitfalls, accelerate your transformation initiatives, and apply the learnings from the real-world implementations that you find in the second edition book. And we'll obviously speak to some of those people who are involved in those today. But this is really, again, designed to help achieve that mission, because if we can help leaders be more effective at using Team Topologies, then we will get those mission outcomes around more humane and more effective organizations. If you're interested in that, then head to teamtopologies.com/cohorts and fill in the details there, and we'll message you once we've understood what the details are going to be. But we'd love to see you as part of that. It's a great opportunity to connect with peers as well. So it's just a small group of 8 people. We think maybe it's up to 12, not sure, but a small group of people. We get to know each other over those 4 weeks, and then obviously we'll follow up later on after you've had a chance to implement some of the details. But I'm really looking forward to like being able to meet people and help people like you in your workplace, in the specific challenges that you've got, and really try to move towards those mission outcomes that we talked about before. Anything else we need to talk about on that, Manuel?
I think that's it.
I think that's it. What else? We've got a success toolkit. So one of the things that we've consistently seen in the last 5 years since the book was published was organizations asking us, how do we scale this? How do we scale this approach across our entire organization of thousands and thousands of people? And so what we've done is we've carefully selected a small set of tools, so typically software tools or SaaS, cloud-based tools, that somehow embody some aspects of Team Topologies and help to bring it to life and help to scale it across an organization. So like rapidly upskilling across entire departments, planning and execute change, assessing and remediating problems with team cognitive load, adopting flow-centric approaches to risk and compliance, detecting and remediating poor boundaries for flow, like team and architectural boundaries and system boundaries, and identifying bottlenecks at scale. So we've pulled together what we're calling Team Topologies Success Toolkit, a grab bag effectively of tools that when you use them in either in isolation or in combination, can really help to achieve those kind of the kind of success that you're looking for at scale. We've got. Should we dive into the? Should we have a look at the first four? Let's have a look at the first four.
Yeah, let's have a quick
that are in
walkthrough.
That's the wrong one. Back here. Where is it? The success toolkit here. So you've been leading with the academy, haven't you, for the last few years?
Yeah, since 2021, effectively as adoption grew and organizations wanted to, I think, rightfully get more people on board the ideas. Why are we, maybe changing things around a bit? Why are we focusing on flow and all this? And you cannot expect everyone in the organization to read the book. So the academy is essentially video-based training on demand that any organization can provide to the employees, and so it's curated in a way that it offers different options based on whether it's just people who should have a basic understanding, or people maybe who are in an enabling type of position that want to understand how do we get started and how do we scale the enabling approach, etc. So it's essentially a curated set of video-based training.
The second toolkit partner at the moment is Cosley, and they do automated governance and accelerating in order to accelerate delivery whilst remaining compliant. So we've known the people at Cosley for quite a long time. I think probably 10 years or more. And their approach is very much based on like empowering teams to be effective whilst being compliant effectively. So like it's really embodying some of the core Team Topologies kind of ideas and principles. Ultimately, some of these ideas and principles came out of the whole sort of DevOps movement, going back to 2009, 2010. It's great to have them on board, because what we see is when compliance and risk and so on are not modernized into this way of working, then you can have all kind of great transformation initiatives. But if they keep hitting up against compliance and risk that's being run in an old style way, then you get some real challenges. So it's brilliant to have Cosley as part of the toolbox. I'll just talk about Teamform, and then maybe you talk about Team. So Teamform we've known for quite a long time. We've actually worked with them on some customer engagements. Their platform provides like a real-time organizational wide view of how teams are working and so on. And they've done some really cool stuff with using some of the Team Topologies digital modeling shapes and bringing that into their product, but backing it with data and so on. They've got a really nice approach. It was really great to meet them when I was out there in Australia recently, where lots of the team is based. But they're now going worldwide with all kind of like in different regions, but in different sectors too. So their product has a specific like angle or flavor, which is explicitly influenced by Team Topologies. So that helps to kind of bring the Team Topologies ideas to life. And you've been doing a lot of work around team cognitive load, right?
Yes. So Temperature is also Team Topologies led, if you like. That was one of the main questions people asked after the first edition of the book. How do we assess team cognitive load? How do we measure? How can we do this in a kind of more systematic way? And that's effectively what Temperature brings. We partnered with Dr. Laura Weiss. She's has a PhD in psychology and organizational psychology, which is a thing if you didn't know. And she was able to, based on all the research and science that exists today around cognitive load, to bring that together into an assessment model that looks across 4 different dimensions and about 25 different drivers of cognitive load in teams. And so Temperature is the product that underneath uses this model, but it's a community-driven product. It's free to use for up to 25 teams. And that's effectively what we're trying to help teams and organizations look at what are really the drivers of cognitive load, because what I see often is the conversation. It's good to have a conversation about team cognitive load, but if we're not going deep enough into understanding the causes and the drivers, we often might be, ending up making decisions that are kind of trying to address some problems that are not really the main issues, right? So that's the idea of temperature, and have a look. It's free to try and see what are the results for your team or for several teams in your organization.
So that's the toolkit, and we're super excited by that as well, because that's like gives us that scale across multiple organizations simultaneously. The other thing we've done recently is to enable bulk purchases of books. We've had lots of requests over the last few years about how can we get 50 copies or 100 copies or 500 copies of the book, because I want to give it to all the members of my department or all the members of my leadership team or every attendee at a conference. One thing which is quite common is like sponsors at a conference will buy, say, 50 or 100 copies, and then and use those as a way to bring people to their sponsorship stand, something like that. So that's now available. Basically, we've done all the logistics and on all of the. It's surprisingly complicated how to get this working worldwide, but don't worry about it. We're reducing your cognitive load by taking on that as a service, basically. So if you head to Team Topologies, whoops, I've got the wrong little banner on there. Give me a second. Well, anyway, you just head to teamtopologies.com/book, and whoops, you'll actually see if you go to the book website there what we've done. Right now there's an order form, bulk orders form. We're probably going to evolve that a little bit just to make it a little bit more user friendly. But it's the first version is live already, so you can actually request. There's a minimum of 50 books, but then you can request other amounts too, and it's worldwide shipping. So if that's something that's useful, it could help to catalyze. A new initiative, or to get people on the same page. Then that's an option now as well. Okay, what else? So there's three broad things we'll look at. We'll look at some outcomes from Team Topologies since 2019. We'll look at what's new, and then we'll look at some case studies. That's roughly what we're going to cover in this session today. Oops. Well, we can leave it like this, can't we? I mean, I'll just take that off for now, actually. So we've sold more than 200,000 copies have sold across 5 languages. It's had a huge impact since 2019, and I guess. I don't know about you, Manuel, but I mean, I certainly I'm very grateful to all the people worldwide who have seen the value in it and have run with it and been advocates for this kind of approach. They've seen the commitment to humane ways of working and effectiveness inside organizations, and have gone, this is the way this is what we're gonna champion inside our organization. It's been amazing to see that. So thank you. Basically, you've been involved in that kind of thing.
I think it's fair to say when we wrote the book, we didn't expect this level of success of the book, because we were mostly expecting senior leadership and more senior technical people to pick up the book, and it was really rewarding to see how all kinds of roles and people were interested, from architects to agile coaches and individual contributors, and I think it speaks to the fact that the book actually is written in a way that it's mostly focused on principles, and then what are the patterns we can use to follow these principles, and which are largely based on engineering principles, because we both have a software engineering background. And so, yeah, really grateful for everyone, not just people who actually went and adopted these ideas or made changes in the organization, but everyone else who maybe at different levels helped spread the word and get people to understand why should we be at least talking more about value stream orientation, fast flow, more autonomy, etc.
I'm going to pop this this slide back on here again, because let's just have a little look at the front cover. Here's the OG version, 2019 version. we'll just flip to the new version. Okay, a couple of things have changed. One, we got a nice purple border. Okay, whatever. Second edition, clearly, but actually this subtitle has changed. Let's have a look at this. 2019 version, Organizing Business and Technology Teams for Fast Flow. What we've done is to actually update that ever so slightly to reflect what we actually realize is the value. And the value is actually organizing business and technology for fast flow value. In other words, it's not just about teams, it's about the Team Topologies approach helps us focus on where capability sits fundamentally in the organization. That's both business and technology. And we have to think about both together. We have to think about both of those two worlds, if you like, together. But it's not just about organizing teams. That's really important. So it's an important change in the subtitle that we decided to focus on. And it's not it's a fast flow value. That was kind of implicit in the first version, but we just want to make that very, very clear. We're not talking about a fast flow of, just updates or any random stuff or features or things like that. It helps. The whole Team Topologies approach is helping us to focus on value in the first place because of all the sense of aligning to a stream of value, like the whole value stream. That's in the word. In the phrase streamlined team. So it's a subtle shift, but I think it's quite an important shift to reflect what Team Topologies is actually bringing worldwide. It starts with teams, but actually kind of expands out into effectively organizational capability in general. There's a nice question here from someone whose name I can't pronounce. Linux is a continent, which is very, very funny. So that's a slightly nerdy joke. Thank you very much. We have got case studies in the second edition from everywhere in the world apart from Antarctica. And that's the penguins there. That's why it's there. I know you're just kidding. Thank you very much. The penguin is Antarctica. So yeah, we've got case studies from all the way around the world, which is brilliant to see. We're focused in this particular session right now on EMEA, so Africa, Middle East, and Europe. But we'll mention a few of the other things as well as we go along. First off, just a word from our sponsor for this session. Our sponsor for this session is Conflux. This happens to be my consultancy that I founded a few years ago, and we are busy helping organizations to achieve millions in annual revenue savings, rapid ROI, and faster time to value. We actually were involved in catalyzing and sort of planting the seed for two of the case studies in the second edition book. That is Telenet and EBSCO. So we'll look at Telenet in more detail a little bit later. We've got the two of the key people involved in that transformation are waiting in the studio right now. And Conflux provides assessment and expert sense checks, workshops and training, leadership right-hand support, and actually we're involved in driving transformations as well. So if you're interested in that stuff, please get in touch. More generally though, we've got sponsorship opportunities like the one I've just shown you. Across all of the stuff we're doing at Team Topologies. Our audience is extremely engaged. We've got about 25,000 people that we can reach. And for those of you that know about newsletters and open rates and things like that, then our open rate sits at around 45%, which is basically unheard of in the industry. Like normally that sits around about 5% for people opening a newsletter. Almost half of the people that we send the newsletter to will open it on a regular basis, and then people actually going through to go into the details, click-through rate is about 5 to 8%. Technical details, but the point is, people that are inside our community are extremely engaged and keen to learn more and engage. We are very careful about the kind of sponsorship messages that go through because we don't want to, lose trust in our audience. But for the right kind of sponsor, it's a super good fit. It's a really great opportunity to connect with people who are very, very engaged, very switched on, and keen to drive forward this Team Topologies mission. So if you're interested in that opportunity, then get in touch, teamtopologies.com/contact, and let's have a conversation about how sponsorship could work for your organization. Anything I've missed on that one? I think that's it, right? Yep. Right. Let's go through some outcomes then from adopting Team Topologies approaches since 2019. I thought it's worth. In fact, I'll put this on the ticker like we did before. Where is it? This one here. Yeah. So this is my paraphrase of what Team Topologies is really about. Given the need for ongoing stewardship of long-lived services, how can we realistically arrange the flow of value to be rapid, safe, and sustainable? This is effectively like my personal, I don't like archaeology, digging underneath all of the underlying principles that were in place when we were writing and thinking about Team Topologies and so on in the first place, right? But it's been important to sort of zoom into the context, because there's definitely people who find some of the Team Topologies ideas challenging, because they're coming at things from a very different perspective. So I think they think this is the perspective that we're bringing with Team Topologies. So there's a need for ongoing stewardship of long-lived services. Now that in itself, to me, is like a super obvious starting point, but it turns out to lots of people it's not an obvious starting point, because lots of people think in terms of, I've got a bit of work, I'll do a project, I'll ship it, and then I'll move on to the next little bit of work, and I won't think about that thing I've done at all after it's gone live, because that's what a lot of people are familiar with, a project-based kind of approach where there's no need for stewardship, or at least no apparent need for stewardship. But it turns out that certainly with building digital systems, but also building all kinds of systems in general, particularly systems that involve humans, teams of people working together, we do need to think about the longer term effect of what we do now. Because if we don't think about the longer term effect, it's going to become harder and harder and harder, more and more difficult to do similar work in the future. If it's with digital services, for sure, it's like code quality and things like that if code quality starts to go down, it starts to get more and more difficult to make changes in the future, and therefore the cost of change goes up, and a bunch of these kind of things. No COO in their right mind, or CFO in their right mind, is going to ask for the cost of change to go up, but that's what ends up happening if we don't take a more stewardship approach. And if you think about the key kind of businesses and organizations that are needed for like any kind of civilized life, it's like, it's banks, it's insurance, it's probably mortgage if you own a house, it's government services, it's things like this. You want those things to be long-lived. You want those things to be ongoing and evolving steadily but surely over time. There's an ongoing value stream in those places. So helping organizations to switch to that sense of, we need to work out how to make ongoing changes is part of what Team Topologies is providing, and that's what it's intended to do.
I think that even though today some people might think, well, we have artificial intelligence and all these tools, and we are starting to reduce the delivery or the build time for new things that we want to offer. And people might think, well, then we don't need as much stewardship, but I think it's actually the opposite. You have more possibilities and faster delivery time, but you still need to be thinking about what are the things that need to be consistent and have a good user experience and be reliable. Obviously in industries like you mentioned, banking and insurance and so on, even more. But in general, because you will provide services to your customers, you are basically making some kind of brand promises, like this is what we offer, this is how it works, and you can rely on it. So like you said, many organizations struggle because they kind of split this into, well, some people are going to build it, and then maybe we'll have some people that are maintaining and evolving, but it needs to be a long-lived focused approach, right?
Yeah.
Where we can have all this innovation happening, and we can really, and I believe that we're going to see more and more reduction in the time it takes to get something reasonable out to our customers. but you still need to think about what is the value of this thing. Do we need to maintain it long term and evolve it, or is this something kind of temporary or disposable? But you need to be making those choices more consciously.
Mm.
Not turns out we had 10,000 customers using this service and now it's broken and we're going to build a new one that's probably not going to end up very well.
Yeah, I think I mean, even zooming into that idea of what's valuable is actually a challenge for lots of organizations. That's slightly surprising, I guess. Lots of organizations don't really know what's valuable, and they just focus on like building more stuff rather than, well, what's the 10% or 5% of things that you're doing which are actually valuable that customers or that users want and need. If you could just zoom in and focus on that stuff, why wouldn't you just do that rather than the 90% which is actually they don't even want? But also trying to make that realistic. So, like, yes, you've got all these great plans and opportunities to seize in the market, but if the way in which you're expecting that to happen is not realistic, then it's going to be extremely frustrating and people are going to burn out. And you aren't going to achieve the goal. So, like organizations that end up with huge amounts of work in progress and then wonder why things don't get done, you have to be realistic about how you can achieve the goals that you've got. So anyway, this to me feels, this phrasing here feels to me like a kind of a quick paraphrase, a quick summary of the what Team Topologies is really about. That's how I see it anyway, these days. But it does turn out that this perspective is actually quite alien to some people. A lot of people are not starting from this perspective at all, and so I think there's a bit of a reframe around this perspective, which is really valuable to help people get on board with. Team Topology. So if you're completely new, so I've given you a flavour of what Team Topology is about. Inside the book, we've got stuff around team types, team interaction modes, heuristics for finding boundaries. We've got ideas around long-lived stewardship. We've got ideas around the architecture for value flow, architecture of teams, architecture of systems, architecture of knowledge work, and so on. And then some patterns for evolution. What we've definitely seen is that lots of people just zoom into the types of team and don't go much further. And that's, well, to be honest, that's like an anti-pattern effectively. That's something which will probably be in the cohort learning, where we guide leaders towards going beyond just types of team, just beyond just structure, but thinking about dynamics, thinking about capabilities, thinking about architecture, thinking about stewardship, and so on and so on.
Yeah, often with customers or in conversations, special organizations who are kind of new to team topologies, I definitely recommend they start with interactions. Don't focus so much on trying to map to the team types, but you will see, first of all, you see more immediate results, and you'll start to understand better how does team topologies change the way you think about work and collaboration by adopting the interaction modes more effectively. Like, and think about what is a collaboration, what should be a collaboration, what it shouldn't be, who is providing services to other. Are they actually focusing on providing this in this acts as a service way where it's easy to consume, understand, and actually reduces cognitive load on the consumers? Or are there things that need to be fixed before you even think about, okay, you start to label teams, you are a platform team and you are a streamline team? Yes, at some point that should help drive teams towards a clear purpose and intent, like why are we here, how do we help the organization, the customers, what should we do and what shouldn't we do. But I believe the interaction modes are much more meaningful to actually get change started.
Because the interaction modes zoom into the purpose and the nature of the work we're doing and a whole bunch of things like this, rather than just structure. I guess that's one of the things I've learned. Like how do we move the conversation beyond structure and into the dynamics of the organization and purpose and value? Okay, let's take 5 minutes to look at some of the outcomes from that we've seen in general, but also we've picked out 4 specific case studies. We'll just mention them. We're not going to go into any detail now because we're going to go to zoom into. Well, we're going to zoom into the case studies from the EMEA region in a minute. We'll just take a few minutes just to go through some outcomes that we can talk about. Here we go. So in some cases, 20 to 30% revenue growth as a result of adopting these kind of approaches, 30 to 50% faster delivery or fewer incidents, and in some cases, like 100% increase in team happiness. Now, these are the kind of things that this is organizational effectiveness, and it's a more humane organization. So these are the kind of outcomes that we wanted when we wrote the book, and we're super happy to see these emerging worldwide, not just in the case studies in the book. Obviously, they're great to read, but in other examples that we hear of as well. So if you're looking to try and persuade your colleagues or your boss or someone to like look at Team Topologies as an approach, so these are the kind of outcomes we can start to talk about. We'll just go through these really, really quickly, like maybe a minute on each one.
So Adidas, I mean, they've been on this journey for a long time, but some specific aspects that they adopted, especially around platforms and the idea of the platform as an internal product, have been really powerful. And as a couple of examples, like one of their data services in their platform, their digital platform was able to achieve a savings of €500,000 per year, just with one service from the platform. Obviously, it has a lot more than that. Other aspects of the improving the delivery approaches and pipelines was able to free up capacity in the product team so they can actually focus on the customers and what they are building and not how it's being built.
EBSCO is another of the case studies in the book. North America, they needed to move beyond a kind of scaled agile approach, so SAFe. They've been using that for a while, but needed to move beyond that. And so we did some work with them, again, to seed or catalyze the change around this, and they reshaped teams and boundaries and so on. And then in the space of kind of less than 2 years, ended up seeing a 26% decrease in cycle time. So in other words, things were getting out of the door more quickly, and achieved an ongoing $9.1 million savings. So that's a recurring saving. So there's performance, and there's financial improvements to be able to see in organizations that are quite a decent size. Like EBSCO's got multiple, many hundreds and thousands of people working inside the organization.
Yeah,
KFC,
we have a case study.
Food retailer. Yep, go for it.
Yeah, I was going to mention KFC. Obviously, the case study is focused in the UK and Ireland. Really interesting work around actually understanding the value streams and then reorganizing to align with the value streams, right? And we'll talk about that a little bit more later. But achieving, reducing cycle time by 1/3 is not easy, so that's a major thing. And from a business perspective, they're really trying to increase the let's say the role of digital sales, and they were able to go from 20% to 65%. So that's pretty impressive.
And
Then we
Yasir
have
is
Yasir.
it called
Yeah,
an everything app? Is that right? Everything app?
they call it super app.
Super app. Yeah.
So it has ride sharing services, but then also peer-to-peer financial services and other services all in the same app, and they are based in the North African market, but I know they've been expanding, I believe, to Middle East as well. And they were in this hyper growth phase. You can see that the number of users was almost triple in a few years. And what I found really interesting is how they took a very iterative approach to how they changed the organization to cope with the growth, right? And at the same time, they were still able to increase the employee satisfaction by over more than 200%. So it's really, really interesting story from Yasir.
Let's have a little quick look at what's new in the second edition. And this goes to a couple of questions we've had. So, William, has any of the content of the book been revised thanks to some of the criticism that the first edition received? So we'll go through a couple of bits of that right now. The short answer is most of the central part of the book has remained the same because we stand behind that. There's some aspects which we'd probably slightly rephrase if we were to fully rewrite it these days, and to be honest, that's probably coming in a new book in a few years' time, where we'll kind of consolidate things and refine some of the terminology. But the core of the book is basically remain the same. But there are one or two changes that we've brought in together with, and we'll go through that in a minute, some new stuff at the beginning, new stuff at the end, and a whole bunch of case studies. So the forward covers a whole set of things. What do we want to zoom into on here? I guess making the Team Topologies principles more explicit, right?
Yeah, so the new forward covers a bit what we've learned in the last 5-6 years, what we saw as kind of some of the misunderstandings, and it became clear to us that probably we should have made the principles behind Team Topologies more explicit already in the first edition, but at least we've done it now in the second edition, because as we were saying before, if you kind of miss some of the principles and you're, let's say, over focusing on, let's say the team types, well, we need to map all the teams to the team types, but that might not in itself be very valuable if you don't understand why do those team types exist in the first place, right? So we made that clear in the forward, and some let's say suggestions and ideas that we've seen work very well to be more iterative on the way you adopt organizational change using team topologies in this case, and how do we see the patterns applied at different scales from a startup where you maybe don't have any platform or enabling teams because you don't have enough capacity, but you can adopt the approach in a different way, all the way to very large organizations where you actually need to have like different approach, for example, for enabling work, where you might actually need a whole department or group of teams that are doing enabling work to be able to bring new capabilities to 10,000 to 100,000 people organization. So those are some of the key new ideas in the forward.
One of the key things is around groupings. So I'm just having a look in the comments to see if there's any relevant comments in here. Anyway, the point being, in the original book, we talked about a platform as a team. It's not really, we realized it was never designed to be a team in the same way that a streamlined team is. It's more like a grouping of stuff that happens. And inside a platform area, into a platform grouping, you'll zoom in, just like we've got down here at the bottom, and you can see different types of teams, additional platforms, additional streamlined teams, groups of streamlined teams, and so on. So there's this fractal or self-similar thing where you zoom in, it looks the same. It's a bit like Russian dolls that stack. Along with the platform grouping idea, which is like a container of other teams, you can generalize it to like a value stream grouping. So at the top here, we've got in this yellow area, value stream grouping might include some streamlined teams. It might include a little platform inside there as well. Like, that's a really important point. We should not have all platforms sitting in one part of the organization and all streamlined teams sitting in another part of the organization. That's not a good model. We should expect the type of the team doesn't relate to the budget. It relates to the nature and mission and purpose of that team. So you can have a streamlined team. You can have a streamlined team that is very focused on a very low level aspect of something, data preparation or something else, compliance, inside like a platform grouping area, for example. So there's quite an important update around groupings and how we think about platforms and how we think about kind of bringing together different types of teams. That's a key addition to the second, so a key extra part to the second edition. And then looking ahead, we reinforced cognitive load as a design principle, and there's definitely some more things to explore in that space. We know there's a lot of work involved in academia and in industry around cognitive load and looking at that in different ways. So in the next book that Manuel and I will write, the next main book that we write, we'll almost certainly zoom into cognitive load and take perhaps a more nuanced view than we did in the first edition. So to your point, William, about some of the criticism we've had of the first edition was that our perspective on cognitive load wasn't particularly refined. It's a kind of fair point, and so we've done some work, like Manuel said before, with Team Pritchard. We've done some work to kind of make that a bit more refined. But the core principle of using cognitive load as a design principle, I think, is absolutely sound and is part of what makes Team Topologies humane. We'll look a little bit about Team Topologies expanding beyond its technology origins into legal services, into healthcare, into supporting global R&D efforts for pharmaceutical companies and things like this that we've worked with over the last few years. There's a mindset shift from efficient machines. That's a traditional 20th century Taylorist view of an organization, shifting away from that towards a flourishing ecosystem. And how can we help this ecosystem to survive and thrive? We're watering it, we're feeding it, but we're not treating it like a machine. And then finally, of course, we've got to talk about AI. And what's been really interesting, though, is how the principles from Team Topologies, if you reframe that from an AI perspective, particularly an agentic AI perspective, it turns out that the ideas are actually kind of useful. And I've got a post just here from this morning that I carefully prepared earlier. On the back cover of the Team Topologies book is a quote from Stuart Winter-Tier, who's a strategic AI product advisor. And he says this: Team Topologies offers something agentic AI desperately needs but cannot invent on its own: clear boundaries, stable interfaces, aligned domains, and a culture of collaborative ownership. So that speaks to your question, Sheryar, thank you, where you said, you're mentioning AI. Would Team Topologies be a good case for an AI agent? Blah, blah, blah. I think what we're seeing is that AI product specialists like Stuart and other people have already seen the benefits that Team Topologies can provide when we're thinking about kind of agentic AI and things. It's early days, but the early indications are that we can use these Team Topologies ideas, probably an extension of them, to help us navigate what that looks like in the future. Right, let's dive into some case studies from the EMEA region. And this is where we get to, by the way, sorry, just before we do, thank you for all the questions. If we don't get a chance to answer the questions, then what we're going to do is collect the questions together and do some kind of follow-on after the session. So your question might take a little while to get answered. It may get answered in the Team Topologies community or something like this. But we'll try our best to answer some of them online today, but otherwise it'll be later on. Cool. Telenet is our first case that we're going to have a little look at. And this is a superb example of a whole organizational transformation. And I'm absolutely delighted to invite to the stage. Here we go, Barbara and João, who are both substantially involved in.
Hello, everybody.
Hello,
thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
And the story from Telenet is amazing, right? So, as you know, Manuel and I were involved at the very start, but we kind of maybe planted a seed, or maybe we watered it, or added some useful things to the soil. But it was you two together with your colleagues who led the initiative and really made it happen. Just give us like a super quick version of the nature of the organization, what the challenges were, and then the kind of things you did to turn it around.
Yeah, maybe I'll introduce at Telenet. So I'm Barbara Arndts, the VP Transformation at Telenet, and came across Team Topologies around 2021 after Telenet, who is a big telco organization. So we sell broadband, we sell mobile subscriptions, and started up having a very traditional waterfall organization model. Obviously, as many companies, we hit the limits of that, and then applied Spotify thinking. That was around 2016, 2017, and had that throughout the organization. But quickly, I got to see that our teams got stuck in endless dependency loops, and really weren't able to deliver the value that they should. And that's where, as Matthew said, the team topology seeds were planted, and we realized there's got to be a better way to organize our teams. And we started exploring the different concepts and the idea of cognitive load and limiting the cognitive load, having very clear missions and outcomes that the teams were responsible for. Really resonated really well. So we had a few workshops, and Joao will talk around those, where we unpacked those concepts and saw the value in a few small areas of the company. But I think where Telenet gets really interesting is then we had a few reflections and debates around can we apply this in the existing context of Telenet? And we thought we thought we would need to apply the principles more at the enterprise level. And started thinking in team topologies, also in the bigger structures and the groups that Matthew that you showed earlier. And that's been a massive breakthrough for us, is taking the concepts that we started playing around with at the level of individual teams and in small pockets over the organization, but then expanding them to the full enterprise scale. I think that jump was a really interesting moment. Maybe Joao, do you wanna jump in and share a bit on how we approached that?
Yeah, sure. So as you said, all start with the training, right? With different leaders at different levels, and then we move to field work, right? So the interesting part was to apply these concepts to find the boundaries, right? We apply the ideas behind domain-driven design and also from Worley mapping to see how things were. And I still remember we were in Megala when the task force figured out that the biggest thing at Telenet is the life cycle of the products. And here what we call a product is, let's think about copper or fiber or 3G or 4G, right? These technologies exist for decades, right? But at the same time, other part of the organization deals with products that is the broadband and my mobile phone, or get back to school and get a laptop for free if you update your internet, right? Those products have a way shorter life cycle. And this was our hypothesis. What if we slice the company like that and then work with lots of platforms to bind the things, right? Because a telco has lots of digital products, but also has a physical world. A cable needs to come to my house, there is a warehouse, all of this type of stuff. And by applying these, allow also to people to express themselves, what technology and business processes should come together. And this was the thinking behind, rather than thinking about all of those functions, was more what were those groups that need to provide these services, both to the customers or to other colleagues, to bring this life. So it was iterative, more focus on some areas of the company rather than others, right? Because there are also different strategic challenge or initiatives. It was very interesting to see folks from marketing, from legal, also engage and see how they could be part of this journey.
There's a nugget of what you just said in there, which is like, what services could we provide? Like that way of thinking to me is one of the things that's been that can be a real unlock for organizations, that Team Topologies helps to nudge in that direction. It's not only Team Topologies, right? But that's one of the things that Team Topologies is doing, helping to nudge organizations in this direction of, hey, what value could you provide to others in the organization? And just that switch around of helping people to see in terms of value consumers and value providers in the organization, and then having like some sort of ecosystem of providers and consumers inside the organization, like that to me feels like such a big unlock. And I'm sure that was it sounds like that was an important moment for you, because it's not the obvious way of thinking for lots of people in the organization, is it? How did you persuade people to think about their purpose and so on as being like providing something to other people in the organization? And what did that feel like as a switch? How did you go about doing it?
Yeah, so I think you're right, Matthew. So at Telenet now, we apply this at scale. So all of our N2 managers and VPs, they either have a streamlined structure that they're responsible for, or a platform grouping, or an enabling service that they provide to the rest of the company. And that includes finance, includes HR, includes legal, and that's I think it's at the mindset switch came from doing it company wide. So everybody is on board with that mental model. It's not just one area of the company trying it, or I think this might help bring it a little bit to life. Maybe I'll just talk through this. So the boxes you see, this is our org chart. So the gray boxes on top are our C-suite members. There are 6 of them. And the yellow, blue, and purple ones below that are all of their direct reports. And using the same logic that we have at the team level, we apply that also at the main structure in the company, the VP level. And the yellow ones are guys who produce value for the customer. The blue ones are platform groupings, and the pink ones are your HR, legal, transformation is one of them, who are providing more of a service to the rest of the company. And I think the mindset shift that this unlocked for us has been tremendous. You're having different dialogues between the different teams in the company, and also viewing providing a service to the rest of the company just gives a lot more skin in the game for the people who own the capabilities.
Exactly, like the idea of finance and strategy providing a service to the organization, that's a big mindset shift for certainly for some people traditionally in those areas. And we'll actually see an example of that in a little bit later in a few minutes, where we look at what Capra, the consulting company in Norway, did. But that shift feels like it's an example of this massive unlock, I think, that you've managed to achieve and that other organizations can achieve, but it needs that executive team reframing, a willingness to see things in a different way and to adopt different behaviors, right?
Yeah. And it works both ways. Yeah, it's the guys providing the service. It's a different mindset shift, because you can't just drop it onto the organization, but you need to go into a dialogue and see where the frictions is and improve the service that you provide. So I think that's a very different mindset shift. And as well from the consumers on the other side of the business, who before were probably more used to, provide me this or give me that. They now also need to have a different relationship, and I think that's really powerful. Yeah.
That's super. There's a lot more detail. Thank you. A lot more detail for those of you watching. If you go to teamtopologies.com/telenet, you'll be able to find out way more details. And of course, what you can also do is buy the book. I know that sounds a bit cheesy, but obviously you can buy the second edition of the book and find out more details there. Barbara and Joao, thank you so much. It's great to have you. And thank you so much for your inspiration and dedication and so on in making this stuff happen and sharing it with us. We really appreciate it.
Awesome.
Okay, who's next? ING Bank is a great example, actually.
I would say maybe if it's okay, we would go to KFC and talk a little bit with Ben, because I think he was under time pressure, and then we'll go to Capra
we can do that
as the last.
Yeah, exactly. It's just worth pointing out that ING Bank as a group, one of the substantial banking groups like worldwide with interest all over the world, are able to. In fact, I'll just share my screen for that. Have been able to use the Team Topologies principles inside what they're doing at a useful scale and got some great results. So this stuff works inside banking. It works inside financial services in the right context. That's all. Yeah. So if you're interested, if you're coming from financial services context, go to teamtopologies.com/ing and you'll be able to find the details, find some of the details there.
Yeah, I would just like to say about this case study, it's really interesting, especially if you work in very large organizations, because again, it's a different mindset of how do we get change into the organization, and it's also thinking about really interesting aspects of, for example, with platforms. They have this idea of promoting platforms, so they start at a very local level. So when we were talking about platform grouping before, they tend to start at the kind of the business domain level. This is what this business domain needs, and then they get sort of promoted between quotes when there's an understanding that this is actually helpful for other parts of the organization. So it's kind of a staged or phased, I should say, approach, which it's not a one size fits all. Well, we build all these centralized platforms and then expect it works for everyone, which we know is usually not a good approach. And the ING Bank is actually one of the few. It's one of the cases that is exclusive to the second edition of the book, but on the website you can find a bit more information on what is the case study about.
Next one, KFC. And we might be able to get 1 minute from Ben. Let's just see if he's able to give us 1 minute.
Hi, Ben.
Thanks very much for joining, Ben. Really appreciate it. And thank you. If all I can say is thank you for contributing to the case study, then I'll say that one. So thank you so much.
And joining during your holidays, I believe. It's even more impressive.
No, it's good to be here. Thank you. And a couple of minutes is fine. Apologies.
So
we could go for it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the KFC case study, and I think it's interesting to see how, well, for multiple reasons. But first of all, it was really driven. The change was driven by business needs, right, during the early stages of the pandemic, where you needed to increase digital sales. But then also how you went about understanding, okay, what are the blockers to flow? Why does it take this long to get changes out the door? So I think that was a really powerful combination for a successful approach. Maybe you can expand a bit more on that. Just why did you feel like Team Topologies would be helpful at that point?
Yeah, definitely. I think COVID naturally was a bit of a catalyst for most businesses, which accelerated investment in digital. I think at that time as well, it was both need and necessity. And at that point, we needed to reevaluate the boundary, the way in which we organise our teams. So again, how could we look to reduce cognitive load, dependencies, potential rework, but ultimately shifting quality up front in all aspects. So that was definitely a big value add in terms of leveraging Team Topologies. And I think probably a primary point was Team Topologies gave us the language, the structure, and really the practices to be able to scale and inform a new way of operating. So looking beyond, let's say, the more traditional way of organising, i.e. by the org chart, rather than the actual working structure, and looking into that area, which is referenced quite a lot in the comments I can see, which is interesting.
Yeah. one thing I found really insightful and a common challenge for many organizations is how you were, and correct me if I say anything wrong here, but you were organized around channels mostly, right? The teams were, the mobile, the web, and the kiosk in the restaurant. And how was that realization that this actually is not conducive to fast flow? Because when we have changes, we probably need to change multiple channels. But how was that realization, and how did you kind of get on that journey of, okay, we need to have teams that are more aligned to the actual value to the customer, to the outcomes for the customer, and they might need to be able to change and work on multiple channels, multiple technologies? And how hard was it to get this message across? Because it's not always easy to get teams on board this sort of changes.
No, it's definitely not easy. Looking back, it was what you may deem as quite a simple exercise or starting point, but really just laying out the work, especially within the context of digital technology. It was very surprising when you just take that time to look at the bigger picture in terms of where is the work spanning, what are the teams based upon our current structures. And already, picture paints 1,000 words per se. So shifting from the picture that was as is to what could be, instantly you saw the realization of a team, a value stream being able to deliver independently with ease, with speed, but also recognizing, okay, well, what does this mean in terms of the relationships between other value streams or a platform service? So being able to have that conversation and visually taking people on the journey, there was a shared understanding, there was a shared view of how we move forward, and it also clarified a lot of things in terms of the boundaries, the scope that are in play, what's expected from one team versus another. And again, within the book, we touch upon, and you've touched upon it in some other slides, in terms of the increase in, or the reduction in overall cycle time, increase in quality, 10 times in some aspects across parts of the teams themselves. But it's always a work in progress. So there's always new levels of how we're structured and the articulation behind that across broader parts of the business and the whole organization. Yeah,
definitely always work in progress. I really like when we were discussing the case study and you were kind of sharing, and I've used this with some of my talks and training to show where you had this image where you could see before most of the work items would span 2, 3, 4, 5 teams, right? So in order to get anything out the door, you would need to coordinate across multiple teams most of the time. And then the result after the changes, which again were not as drastic as you might think, was aligning to the value streams. And then you would see most of the work items can be delivered by a single team. Of course, there are some 20% maybe where we do need coordination, you need to have 2, 3 teams involved. But if 80% of the time the teams are now able to deliver more autonomously, I think that's really a great way to show the value of the approach and to share with the rest of the world. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Ben. It's been great. Thank you for your contribution. Thank you for joining us. Much appreciated. It's good. This particular case study, by the way, for those of you watching, is exclusive to the book. So for now, you'll have to buy the book to read it. But we will be sharing some further details online. And Ben, if you fancy joining me on the live stream at some point, then we'd love to do that. There's lots of ways for us to tell the story as it evolves as well, if you like.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Oops. We're now going to go to Capra, I think, Manuel, right?
Yep.
And we can say hello to Therese from
Hello, welcome.
Capra.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and congratulations on the new book, the new edition.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Well, we've been super inspired by what you've been doing at Capra. Like it was amazing to see it because like I've phrased it in this summary here as kind of leadership as a service. There's a lot more you've done than that, but even just zooming into that particular part that you've done there, I'll share a diagram in a minute. But even just zooming into that part was kind of mind blowing for me because you've taken ideas from the original book and applied it in a way which is basically hugely transformative and really inspiring. Like I'm now inspired I'm inspired by the Capra approach to use in my own organization.
Yeah.
Like I'm learning from you basically on how to do this stuff.
It's maybe worth mentioning that me and Therese actually presented at the Fast Flow conference in the Netherlands earlier this year. I'll look up the video and post it here in the chat, where was mostly you. I was just like providing, let's say, a bit of context around Team Topologies, but all the work you did at Capra, like Matthew said, was inspiring. I still remember the first contacts where I was kind of not really understanding what you were telling me from Capra. Like we're reorganizing, we're using Team Topologies across the whole organization. So maybe just walk us a little bit through those initial stages. Like why did you find that Team Topologies was helpful? What were you trying to achieve with this kind of whole organization change?
Yeah, so today we are around 100 people, and we were about the same in 2020 when this change started. We had grown at a steady pace for several years, but we hadn't changed the way we were organized. So and we really valued this flat structure where everyone could get involved in whatever they wanted. But it was easier when we were smaller than when we were growing. And also I was in the management team, and we saw that we had become a bottleneck in the organization. We had lots of meetings, little real decision making, and maybe too much central control. So we wanted kind of to keep our values alive, that everybody's voice should be heard, and that leadership is more, like you said, about support and managing. So instead of adding more hierarchy into the organization, we created a Team Org, and those missions were to redesign the organization into value streams. Because, as I said, this was in 2020, so our first edition had just come out. So we were really inspired by that book and felt that this could be applied to Capra as well. Even though, of course, the book was talking about more product-oriented organizations, we thought that probably works here as well. So we started to define into value streams. So we had now we have 4 value streams: recruiting colleagues, building company and culture, and building competence and deliver services. So it's our products are easy. We are selling consultants into other companies, but still we do have to we have some values that you have to make sure that are still alive in the company, and of course you have to manage all of this and manage the company. And we did also, as you said, did quite a bold step. We shut down the management team because we thought that we didn't need it anymore, and we wanted to do this full out with all teams. So we do have a team that is taking care of the economics, and we also have a team that is taking care of the strategic direction, but we don't have a management group or management team. And personally, for me, that was quite hard because I was part of that team. It was my team. So I was a bit confused and concerned about how this should work out. And as this was in the middle of the pandemic, so there was, of course, challenges in the world and in our organization as well that we needed to make sure we're taken care of somewhere. But it seemed to work fine, actually.
So
and
in this picture here, we've got that before and after shift. Now, some people might not be familiar with the Team Topologies diagram styles at the bottom, but these show a flow of value from left to right. And crucially, what you're showing, what this is taken from the case study page right on the website, and there's a similar diagram in the second edition book, I think. Effectively, what we've got here is finance and strategy providing services to the rest of the organization. That's like a reframe of what the purpose of strategy and finance is, with repurpose of leadership and exec, I suppose. I want to know from you, like, what does it feel like? What did it feel like for you to go through that reframing, to go through that switch from, oh, I'm going to tell people what to do, into I'm going to provide information and services that other people can consume? Like, what does that, tell me what it feels like. I'm going through it myself, but like, tell me what it feels like. I think it's super interesting for people to hear.
Yeah, I think some of the kind of the basics were in Capra already before. And I know that when I was talking to my manager, asking for help or question, the response was also, what do you think? Many in the management team were already trying to lead in this way already. But the organization was starting to work against it, because we saw that people were coming into the management team asking questions or asking for decisions that they should have been taken themselves. So instead of taking those decisions for them, we tried to push it out there in the organization. But we saw that how we were organized didn't help that approach. So we were trying to organize us to fit a mental model instead of trying to organize us into a new mental model. So I think that you have to have the right mindset in the management group before this could actually be possible, I think. Or maybe it's like...
So it sounds like you already, as a management group, already sort of wanted to turn things into that way. You didn't want to be directing, you wanted to be enabling other teams to succeed.
Yes, because you are losing control. And if you really want control, this is going to hurt.
Yeah.
And there were some challenges, right? Because I'm looking also at the comment in the chat about being wary of formulating strategy, just being goals. I think, in a way, from what I know, you kind of found that out sometimes the hard way, that what you expected teams to be more, self-sufficient and kind of define their strategy or for their area, that sometimes they didn't have the tools, right? Because they hadn't done that before. But again, having the strategy team as kind of more of an enabler platform helped. Is that fair to say that there are some bumps on the road?
Yes, there was some bumps on the road, and I think also that some people, at least maybe as a consultant, you are outside of the customer side all the time, or most of the time at least. And when you come into the company, you want things to just be handled. So some people don't want to decide everything; they just want things to be fixed. So we need to manage that both things could happen. Of course, you should have autonomy. You should have a good direction. Both of that are difficult in any company. But also there's this balance. How much do you want to structure and organize your own company, and how much do you just want to be fixed by someone else? When we were starting this, and team strategy was trying to set these OKRs and set the direction, a lot of teams were trying to get more direction from these teams and saying, tell us what to do, tell us how to solve this. And in good times, when we are making a lot of money and everything is fine, it's easier. But then came the time where we had to save some money. And then it's difficult, because before we could say in a management group, we could discuss this, set a budget, and then let the middle managers tell each department, okay, we need to save money, we need to do this and that. No, we have the whole organization to understand, okay, we can't use as much money anymore. How do we do that? How do we solve that? And all of the company kind of had to own that frustration and to own the solution, because you didn't get the solution. You got the problem and you had to try to find a solution yourself. Yeah. And actually, one of the big difficult thing was when the first time we were setting this new budget for all of the teams. And funny story that I actually didn't mention in the paper, but that I talked with the one that was CFO before we did this change. He was actually out on maternity leave in 2020. So when she came back, she found that we had organized ourselves into teams, and that the management team that she was part of was gone. And now she had to figure out how to do all of this in this new organization. So it was like, okay, welcome back. By the way. So she then had she was then suddenly part of this team finance, where of course the CEO also was, but also more or less different people in the organization that just was interested in economics and interested in solving this way, and figure out how to wanted to learn. Some had knowledge by this already, and some just wanted to learn. So she had to manage her own team and also collaborate with all of the other teams in the organization to set the new budget for the next year.
I think one of the key ideas for me in your case study, there are multiple things, but one is the fact that and as with many things, it's a trade-off, but you wanted to have a more network-based organization where you had kind of, let's say, the cells, the teams or areas with more autonomy, more decision-making power, and that comes at the cost of how do we get shared understanding across the organization on topics that is not up to one group to decide. But you've understood that was a trade-off, and then you look for ways on how do we increase the understanding, how do we enable these different teams and areas so they can make better decisions and have the right tools to do that.
I think it's a super inspiring example. I think like obviously you're relatively small. You said about 100 or so people, so like it's easier to do some things at that scale. But I mean personally, I'd love to dive into like more details there, and maybe even we can follow this up with some more some further like articles and discussions in the coming months, because I think there's loads of organizations that would really love to do something like this. Like there's a real hunger for this kind of approach. And I think you've given a really shining example of how to do it. I mean, I'm sure it's difficult still. It's not that it's all easy, but you've got a really nice, clearly articulated thing to share with other people.
And I can add. Yeah.
Yes, because one thing that we have seen is that actually the cognitive load in Capra could actually be increased because of this, because more people have to take into the consideration the whole. Where are we going? How much money do we have? That things that they didn't have to think too much about earlier. So this is a balance that might have been difficult. They're different from other organizations because now we are adding more things into each employee. Yeah, at least in each team.
I can say that because I've been multiple times to Capra's office for training and other things, and at least unless people are pretending, always people seem quite happy and enjoying what they do. So I think you got from that point of view, from that humane point of view, it's really working well, although there are many challenges for sure.
There's a nice comment here from Andy Bird. He says, I love the idea of transforming from directing to enabling. It feels very hard transition to manage. That could go horribly wrong. Do you have any tips for doing this at scale? Maybe if you got like is there a one sentence tip that you would give at this point? And then I'd love to take that question there and expand it out further, to be honest, because it feels like
it's a big question.
Yeah.
I think that the high trust is really important, and also that there should be room for making mistakes and to learn from them. And if you don't have that in place, this is really, really, really hard. So and managing how to learn, thinking that we probably don't know how to do this. The first time we will do it, we will do something wrong, and how to learn that and talk about those in the organization, I think is really important. And that is, of course, down to trust.
Thank you. That's great. So thank you so much. So there's the Capra case study, teamtopologies.com/Capra if you want to know more. And we'll be definitely coming back to that one over the coming months.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Therese. It's great. Thanks for joining us.
Great to see you again.
And I think what we'll probably do is try and squeeze in some questions, but just make sure we cover off the other bits and pieces now.
We need to wrap up.
I'm
Yeah.
thinking. Exactly, we need to wrap up. I just want to highlight some of the questions. I'm going to switch that off. I want to highlight a couple of the questions that we might not get a chance to answer them today, but I think there's some brilliant questions in here that I'd like to highlight. This is a great question here. How can HR and tech leaders work together using the principles of Team Topologies to design healthier organizational ecosystems that truly support autonomy, flow, and long-term resilience? Thank you, Thales. That's a super one. That probably needs a great big answer as well. We are starting to see HR people, specialists and so on, to start to move towards this approach or these kind of approaches. It's work that we've got some contact with people, with HR specialists. We've been working with them, and we'll do some more stuff, whether it's 2025 or it'll certainly be 2026, where we start to draw out some of the answers to that question there. So that's a super question.
By the way,
obviously, if anyone's got any experience of that, then just drop us a line or put some comments in the chat.
By the way, in the previous session we did for the APAC region, there was someone from HR in the session who said Team Topologies really helped to align people and to actually build a common culture of how things are done in the organization. So that was pretty cool to see someone from that area join this session for the previous one for APAC with that remark.
Question from Mark Cleary. Hi, Mark. How do you think value stream mapping and Team Topologies overlap in bringing value? Super question. I mean, ultimately, they're coming from a similar place, because the starting point for Team Topologies is let's align teams to streams of value. That's a stream aligned team. Well, therefore, we need to know what the streams of value are. So one of the techniques you can use to find that, not the only technique, but one of the techniques you can use is value stream mapping. So like they're in the same, they're orbiting the same like sun or solar system thing, if you like. Like let's start with outcomes. Let's start with effectively what's the value that we're providing and work backwards from there. They're like brother and sister or cousins or something like that. They work really, really closely together. I saw some more. Well, so I think we're nearly going to have to finish. There's an interesting one here from Christian. Can we minimize team coordination by organizing teams, or do we simply need to make it explicit to embrace inherent complexity in the organizations? It's a great question, and I think there's a lot behind that. I can see that you're coming at this with quite a lot of experience. I think it's sort of both. We can minimize a degree of coordination by organizing teams, because we're thinking about value and we're thinking about domain boundaries and things that should be together and things that shouldn't be together. But there will be a point where we've, like Manuel said before, where we get to about, say, 80% of work items are able to be delivered in a single value stream or a single team. But there's still some other stuff that needs a bit of coordination. But hey, I'd much prefer to get to the point where we've got 80% of stuff that's independent, and then we just deal with the 20% remaining with some sort of communication across teams and so on and so on. That feels a way better place than everything is coupled together. So it's a very pragmatic approach, really. Final comment, right. I think, from Prachi. Thanks, Prachi. It's great to see you. It's awesome to hear about the banking client case study. That's ING, I think, because we often get pushed back that this won't work at all at banks. But yeah, exactly. That's why we wanted to include. That's why we wanted to include the case study from ING, because it's proof that it works at a decent scale in banks, and we're starting to see that in other places now as well. We're working with several banks, UK, Europe, a bunch of other places where this stuff is starting to happen. It's not easy, but it can work. Super. Okay, let's wrap. What do we need to do? Yep. Oops. So just as a reminder again, if you're looking for some help in transformation, you can go and speak to Conflux and achieve millions in annual savings, rapid ROI, and faster time to value. ConfluxHQ.com is the place to go there. If you're interested in sponsorship opportunities like the one we've just seen with Conflux, then please get in touch. teamtopologies.com/contact will get you there. We've got our leadership cohorts that we mentioned before. If that's interesting for you, sign up via teamtopologies.com/cohorts. If you're interested in the Team Success Toolkit, you'll find that on the website as well. If you want to purchase books in bulk, go to teamtopologies.com/book, and you can buy boxes and boxes of books in bulk and have them sent anywhere in the world. And it really only remains for Manuel and I to say thank you very much for joining. Let's take humane, effective organizations to the next level. Let's use ideas in the Team Topologies book, particularly the second edition one, and make this stuff happen worldwide. We're excited about the future. Thank you so much for joining.